We are proud to recognize these distinguished alumni. They give credit to our slogan, Amherst Pride. On behalf of the student council members and the student body of Marion Steele, we would like to congratulate the graduates of Amherst schools who are being inducted into this gallery of success. Now I would like to introduce Amanda Bescak, president of the sophomore class, who will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Would you all please stand for Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Stand, please.
Now to introduce our special guest, Kari Lima, Senior Class Vice President.
Good morning, and welcome to the 11th Annual Distinguished Alumni Gallery of Success Awards Ceremony. Today we will be honoring 5 graduates from Amherst for their outstanding achievements. Before we begin our ceremony, we would like to recognize the special guests in our audience. Please stand as I call your name. Here from the Amherst Board of Education, President Mrs. Sandy Friedman. Here from the Amherst Administrative Staff, Superintendent Mr. Howard Dulmage. Assistant Superintendent Mr. Timothy Logar. Administrative Assistant Mr. Robert Wiersum. Marion L. Steele Principal, Mr. Robert Boynton. Associate Principal and Student Council Advisor, Mrs. Lois Van Gutten. Assistant Principal and Athletic Director, Mr. Richard Roth. Walter G. Nord Principal, Mr. William Marley. Shoup Middle School Principal, Mr. Stephen Demko. Harris Elementary Principal, Mr. Daniel Trent. And Powers Elementary Principal, Mr. David Angelani. At this time, any Alumni Gallery of Success members, please stand. Any retired Amherst teachers, please stand. Thank you. At this time, please stand for our Amherst alma mater.
present the greeting, Mr. Howard Dulmage.
Good morning. Honored guests and members of the Amherst Schools faculty and staff, our retired faculty members who have honored us with your presence today, and especially the students of Amherst Steele High School. I welcome you to the 11th annual induction to the Amherst Schools Alumni Distinguished Gallery of Success. It does not seem possible that just 11 years ago we held the first Gallery of Success induction and we honored the first class of Amherst Steele graduates into our Gallery of Success. This first group of honorees included well-known business leaders. It included owners of major businesses, a scientist, a religious leader and author, two leaders in education, including Mr. Powers, the former superintendent of the Amherst Schools for over 35 years, and another individual, Dr. John Ellis, who was the Secretary of Education in the Carter administration during the Carter presidency. Freudian slip there. Pat Leimbach, the writer and lecturer who still is currently working, was inducted during that class, as well as a lieutenant general in the armed forces. As the years passed, many other graduates of this high school have been honored. Artists, musicians, an opera singer, people who volunteered their time and their talents to their community or for special projects, scientists, teachers, radio and TV personalities, bankers, historians, and many others. And today we are honored to have with us 5 newest inductees to the gallery. Our guests represent many walks of life: religion, the environment, education, the military, and human service. But ladies and gentlemen, the men and women that you will meet today are much more than that. Just a minute ago, a flicker in the lamp of time, they sat where you, the students of Amherst Steele, sit today. The individuals that you will meet today, or their representatives, grew up in the Amherst School District just as you did. They sat in the classrooms, perhaps not the exact same room, but in the classrooms. They played in the band or on the sports teams. They ate in the cafeteria. They rode the buses. They walked the sidewalks of Amherst at the end of the day, just as many of you do. And they have something in common with you. They are graduates of Amherst, just as you will be soon. And that's the point. The Gallery of Success is an outgrowth of a belief. What belief? We believe that it is important that the students of today and those for decades to come understand that these schools in this community, that these teachers and these parents have produced graduates who have gone on to make a difference. We want you to know, we want you to believe that it is not growing up in a small town in the Midwest that limits you. It is you that limits you. The monsters of your own mind who tell you that you cannot do something, that you cannot reach for the stars, or that you cannot make a difference. Our honored inductees, those with us today, and those honored in the past 10 years, are living proof that Amherst graduates can achieve, can succeed. That they have achieved and that they have made a difference. Honored guests, we welcome you back. We thank you for lending us your presence today. Your presence, your story, may mean that some young person in this audience or some young person in years to come who reads about you will push back the mental barriers, that there will be some light in the darkness, that they will say in some hidden, quiet corner of their mind, hey, I can do that. Your presence here today may mean more than you can ever know. We welcome you. God bless you and thank you. Finally, good things don't just happen. Good things happen because good people make them happen. This program and the activities of the Gallery of Success are made possible through the efforts of the Steele High Student Council, the parents and teachers for Steele, and Mrs. Lois Von Gutten. You've done a great job. Please accept a great thank you from all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Dulmage. Now, Karie Coffman will be inducting Mr. Carl Sabers, class of 1935.
Being inducted into this year's Distinguished Alumni Gallery of Success is yet another addition to a list of accomplishments for Mr. Carl Sabers. Mr. Sabers was born in 1917 in Amherst, Ohio. Mr. Sabers was a natural-born organizer and leader. This is even evident at age 9 when he produces the world-famous Chautauqua plays. For these plays, he built the backdrop, the stage, a fireplace, and hung the curtain. He organized the neighborhood kids who were the actors and rehearsed for days at a time. Relatives and friends would faithfully come to see these plays. This is one of the first successes of Mr. Sabers' life, only to be followed by many more. Mr. Sabers graduated from Amherst High School in 1935, and having accepted the Lord as his Savior, decided to become an evangelist. At age 19, he took a trip around the world on a freighter to see what the various religions of the world were like. He traveled thousands of miles in Japan, China, India, Egypt, and Palestine, taking pictures of the largest and most famous temples and shrines of the world. Various newspapers in some of these countries Mr. Sabers visited devoted space about this strange American who traveled the farthest corners of the country filming historic temples. When he returned, he showed his travel pictures and lectured at various churches. Soon after, Mr. Sabers left Amherst and flew to Los Angeles, California to enroll in Life Bible College. While in school, he had his own Christian radio broadcast on a popular Hollywood station, KMTR. Mr. Sabers also took part in Christian children's broadcasts on the station KFGS. Mr. Sabers' graduate thesis from Life Bible College turned into his first ever published book, Where Are the Dead? 2 million or more of this book have been distributed. Reverend Sabers took postgraduate work and received his master's degree. Carl Sabers married Evanita Holder in 1942. On their honeymoon, one of the stops they made was in Aldershot, Canada, to see Russian scientist Dr. Evan Panin, who spent 50 years discovering the numerical design in the Holy Bible, proving the Bible to be divinely inspirited. Reverend Sabers was intrigued by his work. Therefore, Dr. Panin granted permission to Reverend Sabers to use and simplify some of his 20,000 manuscripts. Thus, Reverend Sabers wrote Mathematics Prove the Holy Scriptures. 50 years later, his publishing company still receives orders from various parts of the world. Several million copies have been sold. Carl Sabers was the pastor at a little four-square church in North Inglewood, California. Since the congregation was growing, he decided to build a new church. Reverend Sabers worked as his own contractor, organizing and managing just about everything. By the time the church was complete, it was totally paid for.
During Reverend Sabers and his wife were blessed with the birth of their one and only child, Carleen Louise. Even though Reverend Sabers loved pastoring, he felt a need to devote more time to his writing and publishing, so he resigned as pastor from the Foursquare Church. Reverend Sabers started a Christian study course series. He wrote and co-authored 27 different books. Radio ministers across the country purchased these books, offering their listeners a different book each month in return for a donation toward the broadcast. This plan created a lot of interest. In a short time, 30,000 people were looking forward to receiving the next book. Next, Reverend Sabers came up with an entirely new plan to place the message of salvation into every home in the community. These attractive, bright-colored, tiny giant booklets were 3 inches by 5 inches in size and contained 20 pages of the Lord's Word. Pastors and churches united to buy the quantity needed for every home in their town. Letters and booklets were sent to churches around the nation. The church's picture, address, phone, and time of service was printed on the back of the booklet. Every church would offer to each home in their city this free booklet. The city was divided into districts, and the plan was carried out. Reverend Sabers wanted to give every person in that city an opportunity to accept Jesus as their Savior. Reverend Sabers has a vision of publishing his own books. With the help of a friend, Britta Robertson, he was able to get started publishing in a small building in Los Angeles. His business kept growing, and he moved into a larger building. His staff and equipment continued to grow. He had by this time 3 large printing presses. He was admired and offered several jobs by owners of numerous printing companies. However, there was no way Reverend Sabers would quit printing the gospel. In early 1970, he had his first heart attack. Sometime after that, he closed down his printing shop. He then had a stroke, and 3 years later, in November 1976, he passed away with a fatal heart attack. However, Carl Sabers' work still continues because he devoted his life to reaching out and helping the lives of others. So I'm greatly honored to present this plaque to Mrs. Carleen Signor in remembrance of her father, Mr. Carlos Saber, induction into the Distinguished Alumni Gallery of Success.
This is a real honor. As a child, you grow up, and I worked in the printing press with my dad, and the cutter, and I used to sleep in the haystack behind the cutter and sleep on top of the folder. And so as a child, I just saw, the drudgery of day-to-day living in the print shop. So I really never understood, and we didn't have enough money a lot of times, and it was really difficult to continue on, and until now that I'm older, to really understand, why did my father do this? What was the purpose? And it all started in the M.L.S. Town Hall when Ida Mae and Clarice DeVry held a church service in the M.L.S. Town Hall, and my father went there, and they sang and they played their guitars, and it was just 2 young girls that had graduated from Life Bible College, and they just shared the love of the Lord Jesus Christ, and it touched my dad's heart, and like he found that, God answers prayer, and that he's real. He's not just a God way up in the sky that, where is he? But he became real and personal to him. So my father had planned to be a medical doctor, and within an instant, his whole life was changed. And he decided, I want the world to know what Jesus did for me. And so he decided, and I don't think he really knew the plan that was ahead of him, but he dedicated his life to the Lord, and step by step, God just led him. And when he went on his trip, he studied the various religions. Well, maybe there's some other way, but all the other religious leaders were dead and in the grave where Jesus had risen, and he's alive, and he's personal, and you can experience him. So the first book that he wrote is Where Are the Dead? And most books in those days were hard-covered books, and he knew that people couldn't afford hard-covered books in those days. They just couldn't afford it. So he was the first one to publish in a paperback book and make books smaller, where he wanted every person to be able to afford to buy the Word of the Lord. And there was a family in Amherst Hill, Ohio, and their daughter had died, and the family had asked him, well, where are the dead? And he got to thinking, well, anyway, so when he went to school, his thesis, that question that was asked him, he took out of Scripture, and he answers all those things, where are the dead? And as he continued, to prove that the Holy Scriptures are true, if you don't believe they're true, then how, what good is there? Then it was like the Lord led him to this Russian scientist who had discovered this mathematical sequence within the Holy Scriptures, and it was in the Old Testament manuscripts, ancient manuscripts, and even in the New Testament, the Greek manuscripts. Like, in our English language, we have A, B, C, D, and then we have the numerical numbers 1 through 10. Well, the Hebrew and the Greek, they don't have the numerical numbers, but each letter, like alpha, beta, they each have a number assigned to them. Well, what this Dr. Ivan Panin had discovered by accident was that he added up mathematically, he added up all the letters, and then they all divided by a certain number. And through the end of the course of all of 50 years of work, which my dad, he had the ability to take out the complex and to make it simple where you can understand it. He wrote this Mathematics Proves Holy Scriptures, where it shows that added up, it can be divided all by 7 or whatever. You have to read the book. But and they've tried to prove, other people have tried to write in the Hebrew or in the Greek, and when it's by man, it doesn't add up mathematically, but the Holy Scriptures do add up mathematically. And so it proves that the Holy Scriptures is the inspired Word of God. And also today, there's a new book out that's just come out, and it's called The Signature of God by Jeffrey Grant. And they've just now put on computer the manuscripts, and they found in the Old Testament where it prophesies the last days, it says they had this computer scan through, and like every 21st letter, there's a secret code, and it spells out like Arafat, it spells out Rabin, and it spells out assassin, and it spells out the assassin's name. So, in other words, in the book of Revelation, it says in the last days that the seal would be unveiled. And today, I think the seal is being unveiled so that understanding could come forth that the Holy Word is the true Word of the Lord. So I have samples of my father's work. I've had them Xeroxed, and I know some of you aren't going to the luncheon, so I have these available. Just come to see me, and I wrote a biography of my father, and if you'd like to have one, I could maybe mail you one later. But my father was kind and loving. I think the only time he ever really got mad at me or got peeved is when I had the hiccups. But he always called me baby Carlene, my baby, and even after I was married, he says, get milk for the baby to the waitress. And he was an awesome man. And now that we still get orders, his books are out of publish right now. I would like to republish them, and we still get orders from Finland, New Zealand, Africa, all over the world, and we don't even know how they even got there. And he did write, he was the first to make little pocket books. He called them tiny giant books because they were tiny, but yet they were giant in the power of the word of the Lord. So I just want to thank you for this time to share about my dad's life and his dedication to the Lord. And there were 3 scripture passages that sort of related to my dad. And one was in Ezekiel 25, where It says it was where they were building the temple or the tabernacle, the tent in the Old Testament. And it said that God had chosen this particular man, and he had filled him with the Spirit of the Lord to be a craftsman, to design, to work with gold and to work with silver. And that even the people, the women would spin all the fine linen and make, and they would present what their abilities were. They would bring it to the temple. So in other words, God gives us each talents, even the women who sew. We're all created, and the Creator has a creative plan for us. So my father, I think in that Amherst Town Hall, he made the decision, he was willing, and he had the heart to serve and be the voice and mouthpiece of the living God. So thank you very much.
Mindy Szalay will now induct Miss Mary Binion, class of 1971.
Hard work, dedication, and knowledge. These are the first words that come to my mind when thinking of our next inductee, Mrs. Marion Binion. After graduating from Marion, Steele in 1971, she continued her education at Northern Colorado. Mrs. Binion shared with me a story on why she chose to go there, and I would like to share it with you. When Mrs. Binion was visiting Northern Colorado, she met two professors there. They impressed her so much, and I quote, "If Northern Colorado could produce two such wonderful men, I want to be a part of that." I share this because it really reflects her character. Mrs. Binion went on to earn a bachelor and master's degree in arts with an emphasis on special education. Mrs. Binion follows the motto, "You should think about children's tomorrows by doing things today." She has sure done a number of things to improve children's tomorrows. Mrs. Binion started her career off being a tutor for children with learning disabilities, then moved on to teaching elementary school for mentally retarded children. Teaching preschool children with severe handicaps was her next accomplishment. Mrs. Binion now works as a project consultant for Orklish, which is a statewide project that provides services to those who help support students with severe disabilities. She is responsible for the facilitation of a group that helps assist technological services. She is also an active leader in town meetings for national rehabilitation groups to help them set and reach their goals. Another motto Mrs. Binion believes is that if learning is an act of exploration, then technology equips the explorer for the journey of a lifetime. Mrs. Binion's work right now makes sure all children with or without disabilities have the supplies they need to receive an education. Mrs. Binion has taken part in the publication of 7 books, serving either as the author, the co-author, producer, or editor. These are books that help others understand people with disabilities better. She has also just completed a film on the success of technology. Mrs. Binion has had so many great accomplishments in her life, and she says the best reward for all her hard work is the happiness of the children. Before talking to Mrs. Binion, I thought she was a wonderful person, but after talking to her, I know she is. She impressed me with her mind, but even more so with her heart. Mrs. Binion has benefited greatly from going to Marion Steele, and Marion Steele benefits greatly from having people like Mrs. Binion. It is my honor to induct Mrs. Marianne Binion into our Distinguished Alumni Gallery of Success.
Well, thank you, Mindy. As I was trying to decide what my message to you today would be, I came across a Hebrew proverb: "Do not confine your children to your own learning, for they were born in another time." You know, it struck me. What in the world could a member of the baby boomer generation say to this next generation of leaders that would have some sort of impact that you would even care about? All of the well-meaning advice in the world isn't worth a hill of beans if I'm not addressing the right issue or ones that you care about. So I thought, Well, you know, perhaps maybe what I should do is to tell you what I learned most recently from Mindy. I was very lucky enough to have been home on Labor Day, and Mindy invited me over. I dressed up, walked to the front door, and Mindy's mom opened that door. We exchanged hellos, and then Mindy's mom whispered to me, "She's a little nervous," ever so quietly. Well, fortunately for me, neither Mindy nor her mom could see my knees shaking because I wear long dresses. I walked into the kitchen to the aroma of freshly baked Pillsbury cinnamon rolls. Yes, you know the kind, the ones you whack on the countertop, you know, to open up, they pop out, put in a pan, bake them, put the frosting on, a little juice, coffee, yum. It was great. And I'd learned my first lesson from Mindy. Contrary to what Nike urges us, don't just do it. It's incredibly easy to get caught up in the busyness of life, moving from one activity to the other, working harder and harder, being very efficient, but not very effective. And it really doesn't help us if we're climbing that ladder of success and we find out that it's leaning against the wrong wall. Every step we take just gets us to the wrong place faster. So what I hope that you do is to begin to start with a promise to yourself and to keep it. Set realistic goals. Commit to them. Focus on accomplishing the results, because tomorrow will always arrive faster than you think. So Mindy and I talked a little bit longer, and as we talked, we soon discovered that although we're years apart in age, we were connected by similar interests. As many of you know, Mindy is a lifeguard, but what many of you don't know about me is so was I. And as we talked, I relearned my next lesson that I had learned as a young child from my swimming lessons. Stick to the buddy system. And here's how I'd like to apply that message for you today. Mindy told me a story about a young man in your class with a physical disability. It was a snowy day, and he tripped in front of her as they were entering school. Books and papers went flying, and some of Mindy's classmates just kept on going. But Mindy stopped to help. But even more important, she went home that night and talked to her mom and said, "Did I do the right thing? I didn't want to embarrass him. Did I say it the right way? Did I say the right things?" She questioned why and how she helped. And in so doing, she was re-examining her principles and her values. And you know what she found? She's living them, beginning with the belief in the value and the trustworthiness of everyone. And if we live our values, we will have a strong sense of integrity and control and interdirectedness in our lives. It's important to be able to define ourselves from within, rather than by other people's opinions or by comparisons to others. Become a buddy to your values. The more we talked, we then looked at her yearbook, and I met her dad and one of her sisters, and we discussed prom preparations, and Mindy was late to work that day. But here's where I learned my final lesson. 1 + 1 = more than 3. It's interesting that today I'm being honored and placed into the Alumni Gallery of Success based on my accomplishments as outlined by my resume. I'm very thankful. However, I want you to know that I do not measure my success the same way. I'm not successful because I wrote and produced a video. I'm not successful because I have published papers or made national presentations. I measure my success through my relationships, my husband, my children, my family, my friends, and the people who have touched my life throughout my working years. The most important ingredient in a relationship is not what we say or do, but what we are. It's the foundation for our interdependence and synergy with one another. Synergy is that notion that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. If you take 2 pieces of wood and put them together, this wood will hold more than the total weight held by each separately. From what Mindy tells me, and I believe her, the class of 1998 has synergy. Wouldn't it be great if if all of you could take that synergy to create a new path for your generation, one that is geared towards service and contribution, and that is less adversarial, one that does not hate, one that is less selfish, more trusting, more giving, more loving and caring. Because you know that, because then you would be more successful, and so would I. I've been so blessed by the lives of so many people, some of whom are with me today. My mom, Tom, Carol, Paula, thank you. Thank you to my family and my friends. Thank you to my old and new friends for making today such a special event. I truly appreciate the gifts that are available to me as I interact with the hearts and minds of all of you. Thank you.
Now, Nikki Gongaware will be inducting Miss Gail Ann Shinsky, class of 1973.
Growing up, there is a time in a young girl's childhood when she remembers becoming stronger as a person. We all have obstacles to overcome. Some are real, while others are perceived. As a female, she was told by many boys that she would never be able to shoot from beyond the three-point line. She practiced for weeks and could not do it. Until one day, on the playground with everyone around her, the boys began, "You can't shoot, you'll never make it." She visualized back to her practices and saw herself make the shot. Swoosh, nothing but net. The crowd stood in amazement. She just smiled and walked away. She would not lose. She refused to accept that she could not do something. This will and this drive to do what others say you can't defines Gail Ann Shinsky's life and philosophy. In high school, she fought hard not to be compared to her sisters. Then, at graduation, she challenged her father when he strongly disapproved of her idea to join the Navy. Being a former seaman himself, he knew what she was headed for and encouraged a college education like her sisters. Regarding her father's wishes, she acted as an individual on the edge of maturity. This sporadical decision led to a respected 22-year profession. There she perfected, lived, and perceived a life of dedication, accomplishments, and honor. Some of these honors include the first female ever to be awarded Chief Petty Officer, as well as the first female ever to be awarded Chief Warrant Officer, a Master Training Specialist in Electronic Maintenance, and graduated from Hawaii Pacific University, summa cum laude, and one of 3 valedictorian speakers. But her greatest accomplishment of all is the total package. The woman winning in situations where people doubted her. A little girl who was told she could not shoot like the boys. A woman who became the first to succeed where others have failed. This woman's name is Gail Ann Shinsky, and it is my honor to induct her today into this year's Distinguished Gallery of Success.
Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for inviting me here. This truly is a wonderful day. I spent the morning at the school, and I was there last evening also, and it just brings back such fond memories. I thought about it for about a week or so, saying, what's important here? And the things that came about were what went on when I was a student here and what Amherst had done for me. And I can't see who the retired teachers are out here, but I'm sure some of you were mine, and I have to thank you because I received such a good education in a broad upbringing that I would have never succeeded in the world out there. I traveled the world. My first duty station was Puerto Rico, and when I went there, I was the first female ever to go in that shop, and I was told, it might be difficult. But I managed to fit in quite well. And one time when I was out working on the equipment, my department head walked in and he saw me tuning up a tape recorder, and he says, I never thought I'd see a woman doing a man's work. And I turned around and I looked at him and I said, did you ever stop to think that this might have been woman's work all along? Well, I left him pretty speechless there, and from that we became good friends, and over the years it continued. And last year when I retired in Hawaii, he came out from Florida to attend my retirement ceremony. It was very, very touching. But there's been also other experiences that I've had that I had the foundation to build on. I mean, there's a lot of decisions to make out there. And I can remember back when I was in English class, and Mrs. Dombrowski, I remember her so well, and she was just so into her poetry. And I couldn't understand, wow, why does she get into this so much? But there was one poem that we had to memorize, and it was called The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost. And at the time, I said, okay, I memorized it. But I have used that poem, has been through my life ever since, and at different points it came about. And at my retirement, I had it as the closing page on my program. And I feel I've gotten to the last stanza of that poem where it says, I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by. And that has made all the difference. It really has meant so much to me to get the opportunities to travel. I said I was in Puerto Rico, Iceland, Spain. My favorite tour, I had two favorite tours. One was an instructor in Pensacola. And I can see where teachers get their satisfaction. They do it. Sometimes it's a thankless job, I'm sure, but that spark that you get when you see students succeed. And I taught electronics for 4 years, and it was just 8 to 10 students, so it was a very close situation. So I really do admire the people in the education world, which most of you are here. And the other duty station that was probably, we always called it the Navy's best kept secret. I was there for a year in 1992. It's called Diego Garcia. It's a British Indian Ocean territory. For those of you not familiar, if you looked where India is and go down to the tip and go just south across the equator about 5 degrees, and that's where you would find it. It was just like Gilligan's Island. It was isolated duty, no cars, no fast foods, you know, it was really out there, no families. But we loved it and we made the best we could of it. I had a lot of job responsibilities there, and the camaraderie was just wonderful, and it, you know, really was a special time of my life. But one of the interesting things when you travel a lot, some off-the-wall things happen, and we had a royal visitor. We had Prince Edward came to visit us for 3 days, and I met him in the officers club, and we had dinner, and then the next day he came out and played volleyball and a cookout with us, and we were given all this proper protocol on how we had to speak to him, and pictures were very limited, and they even said, and you definitely cannot take pictures of him when he is eating. I thought, it's pretty strange, but I'm sure they've got their reasons for it. But we were out there playing volleyball, and he was playing the net. He's a pretty good player, and one of our guys came up on the side, and they both went up to the ball at the same time, and he fell, and we all like, whoa. We thought, you know, Prince fell down. Are we in trouble? But it was pretty interesting. So those are, you know, some of the highlights. Also, what I learned while I was in the military, and I think things have changed a lot since then, but I always felt that being the minority, women back in those days, always had to do extra hard work just to be compared as equal with my male counterparts. And some people might say, oh, that's not fair and that's not a good thing. But I was so happy that it was that way, because I had to try extra hard, and that just makes you appreciate things so much more later on, that you learn so much more. And it paid off to my advantage, because a couple of times I was lucky when I was in Spain, because I knew what I was doing. They sent me to Italy to fix one of their computers there one time, and once when I was in Hawaii, they sent me to Guam. But I could have skipped Guam. It was a pretty small place. But it was a good time. So for any of you young people up here, you know, in high school and stuff, you know, if you have your heart or an idea that you might want to go into the military, it really is a good field to go into. They allow you so much opportunity to express yourself. You might find that hard to believe, but you are given such responsibilities early on that you just grow immensely. And the travel opportunities, you just can't beat it. And even after you retire, there's a lot of benefits that you just can't overlook. So if any of you are thinking about the military, I would gladly, sit down with you sometime if you want to talk about it and give you some pointers and put you in the right direction, because sometimes you just can't trust them recruiters. That part I do know. So all in all, it's been a lot of fun. And Mr. Petersen in the choir, I was a member of the choir in high school. You guys do a great job. I really love the singing you do. And I also looked around the school and I saw this video program in the morning news that you put on, and I've been watching in the paper. I was on tennis. There was, maybe 12 of us. I see this huge squad of women playing tennis and all the other sports going on at the school here. And the education and the recognition everyone is getting. Amherst is a wonderful place to grow up and to go to school. And like Dorothy from Wizard of Oz, all the traveling I've done, there's just no place like home. And I hope that if you don't appreciate what you have here now, you'll come back someday like I am here and say, thank you so much. It was a wonderful time, and thank you.
Steve Szucs will now be inducting Mr. Jeff Reep, class of 1974. Being inducted into this year's Distinguished Alumni Gallery of Success is yet another addition to a list of accomplishments for Mr. Jeffrey Reep. Mr. Reep graduated from Marion Steele High School in 1974. After graduation, he accepted a college basketball scholarship and attended Cedarville College. While a student and athlete at Cedarville, Mr. Reep tallied his own sports records. He graduated 9th on the Yellow Jackets all-time scoring list with 1,279 points. He was a 2-year team captain, 2-time Cedarville MVP, and twice named to the All-Mid-Ohio Conference and All-NAIA District 22 teams. After graduating, he coached the Cedarville junior varsity basketball team for 1 season, posting a 14-4 record. He then went on as a graduate assistant at Delta State in Mississippi from 1979 through 1981, and served as an assistant coach there for 2 years. He spent the 1983-1984 season as an assistant at Stetson University in Florida. Mr. Reep also played a key role in helping New Mexico State establish one of the top basketball programs in the country. As the assistant coach at New Mexico State, his team made postseason appearances in 7 consecutive years, including NCAA berths from 1990 through 1994. Mr. Reep then returned to become head coach of the Cedarville Yellow Jackets. He is also an associate professor in the Health and Physical Education Department. And as busy as Mr. Reep is, he still finds a way to be active in his church and to spend as much time as he can with his family. His family includes his wife, Chris Reep, and their 4 boys, Ryan, Nathan, Aaron, and Jason. Jeff Reep represents an exceptional college basketball coach and family man. These attributes, along with his own diverse talents, make Mr. Reep a very accomplished and unique man. So on behalf of the Student Council, faculty, and students at Marion High School, I proudly present to Mr. Jeffrey Reep this plaque as a remembrance into his induction into this year's Distinguished Alumni Gallery of Success.
Thank you, Steve. I'd really like to thank the community of Amherst and the faculty and the students and the administrators at Marion Steele for the opportunity to be here today. When I stop and think of all the people that are qualified to be here today and the ones that could have been selected, I'm truly honored. I'd like to mention a couple people that are real special to me, and Steve did mention my wife, Chris, and my 4 boys, Ryan and Nathan, Aaron, and Jason. And just for their support and understanding. In the coaching business, there's a lot of nights that you don't get home on time. Some nights you're on the road and don't get home at all. And then there's even other nights when you get home and you're so tired about all you can do is hit the couch. And they've been real understanding, and I appreciate that. Chris is at every game that she can possibly be at. She's been at Madison Square Gardens in New York when we've played there. She's been at tournaments in Hawaii. And not just those games, but also a lot of nights out on the road recruiting in small junior colleges and high schools in Texas and California. And just to have that support and that understanding, I really do appreciate it. My mom and dad are able to be here tonight, or this morning, Mr. and Mrs. Carl Reep, and they have just been so supportive. I can remember all through junior high, all through high school, I think there was only one game, and that was over at Firelands, that they were unable to attend. And just that support has been great. And even during high school, they were willing to sell the house and move to Amherst for me to have more opportunities at Marion L. Steele, and I really appreciate that. And the last 4 years out in New Mexico, they even came out and stayed in January and February to be with us and to attend games, and they would come home. But the more I thought about that after moving back to Ohio, I don't know if they were so interested in seeing us or if it was just to avoid some of the winters here. That's been something I've had to get used to, but I appreciate their support. My father and mother-in-law, Mr. and Mrs. Dave Wilson, are here, and they've been very, very supportive, and I'm thankful that they're able to be here today. In fact, I had a birthday earlier this month, and I got a birthday card from my mother-in-law, and I should have brought it and showed it to you. But inside, it was a nice note, and at the bottom she said that I was her favorite son-in-law. And I'm not sure whether she really likes me or it's just because I'm her only son-in-law. But I'm glad she's here, and her husband, Mr. Wilson. My brother Dan and his wife Polly both graduated from Marion L. Steele. Dan played varsity basketball for 3 years, and we had the opportunity to play with each other our first year at Cedarville College, and that was a great experience. And he's a mechanical engineer at Nordson and was unable to make it this morning, but is planning to make it over for the luncheon, and I'm grateful for that. And just the opportunity to be back closer to home and family and to spend more time with everybody, that's been great. Norris Smith, Coach Smith, was able to make it up. He's the head baseball coach at Cedarville College, and taught here at Marion L. Steele for a long time. He was the head baseball coach and basketball coach, taught biology. In fact, had the 3 other inductees in class in biology, and so I was glad he had to get up about 5:30 this morning to make it up here, so I appreciate him doing that. I'd just like to challenge you or encourage you to do 2 things. One is to set priorities. Because if you don't have priorities, you're just going to be tossed whichever way the wind is blowing that day, and you're not going to be settled in anything. The priorities that I've tried to live by is the first thing is to keep the Lord first in everything I do. And as been mentioned before, and His Word is being the standard in my life. And then realizing that anything I have or anything I can do or the desires that I have are basically just gifts from Him. The second thing is keeping my family a priority. How many times do you hear people talk as they get older and say, I wish I'd have spent more time with my wife and my children? And I really purpose not to be like that in the future. And the third thing is to do the best job I can at my job, and not just to do what I'm asked, but try to do the little extra and go that extra mile. And I just heard this illustration earlier this week. I thought it was really fitting. It was in a classroom, and the guy had this glass jar on the table. And he said, this jar represents your life. And he took a bunch of little rocks and stone and gravel and filled it up clear to the top, added a few extra on, and he asked the class, is that jar full? And they talked a while, and they said, no, it's really not. And he says, you're right. And he took a pitcher of sand and filled it up clear to the top, and the sand went all down through the rocks. And he asked, now is that jar full? Is your life full? And they talked some, said, no, it's not. And he said, you're right. So they got a pitcher of water, and he filled it up with water, okay? And as it went down through the rocks and the sand, and it was filled up. And so they came to the conclusion that glass jar was full. And he goes, what does this illustrate in our lives? And they discussed it for a little while, and he says, what it is, it shows that those rocks, if we don't put those rocks in first, we're never going to get them in the jar. And he said those rocks are the important things in life. As was mentioned earlier, as far as determining our eternal destiny, our families, our jobs, those type of things are the important things of life. And if we don't put them in first, and if we don't make them priorities, then our life's going to be full of water and sand, the insignificant, the urgent things of the day, the unimportant things. And if we need to have priorities, or we're going to miss the very important things in our life. And the second thing is to have character. Because if you don't have character, you'll never act upon those priorities. You'll just do what's convenient or easy at the time. So those are the two things that I'd really like to just challenge you with as far as setting priorities and then developing the character to act on those priorities. And just over the years, I've had a lot of chance to sit through athletic banquets and even opportunities to speak at them. And it's interesting, one thing whenever I speak, the thing that is the common thread when I do well is when it's short. So I'm going to learn from that lesson and keep it short today, but I want to leave you with this little story that I think sort of sums this up. There was this little boy, and he was born, and he only had a head. He was just a head, and he loved basketball. And so his dad would set him in the chair, and he would just watch games for hours and hours. And his dad would even take him to the games, and they would set up the games, and he'd hold him on his hand like this, and they would watch the games, you know. And he just loved basketball so much. As he got older, the dad just went into his room one night, and he said, son, I think you really just need to pray that the Lord would give you a body so you could play basketball and I wouldn't have to hold you at the games anymore. So anyway, he did. And sure enough, the Lord answered his prayer, and woke up one morning and he was 6'6", 235, and just a great athletic basketball body. So his dad got him a hoop. He was so excited, got him some lights out in the driveway. And he just played night and day and just had a great time at it. It was one night, and he's shooting around, and it's getting dusk, and the ball goes off the edge of the rim, and it goes out in the street. And he runs out after it and to get the ball, and he doesn't see a car coming. He gets hit by the car and is killed. And so the moral of that story is quit while you're ahead. Thank you.
Sarah Salvo will now be inducting Mrs. Suzanne Breen Johansson, class of 1975.
We are here this morning to honor those who have accomplished a great many things upon their graduating from Marion High School. Nothing I say about the next inductee will do justice to the things she has achieved to receive this honor. Upon graduating from high school, Suzanne Johansson enlisted in a 6-year term for the United States Navy. During boot camp, she developed a rare bone disease called osteomyelitis. After spending almost a year in the Madigan Military Hospital in Fort Lewis, Washington, she was discharged as a disabled veteran. There were doubts of her ever leading a full, active physical life. However, she struggled with and overcame most of her disabilities, and now there are very few activities that she is unable to participate in. From this point on, she went to the University of Cincinnati and graduated magna cum laude in 1982 with a degree in marketing and management. She had decided to work as a commodities broker for a car dealership in Chicago, but plans changed when she was approached with an opening to the National Park Service. She went on to work as a naturalist and director of programs for several parks, and eventually ended up at Crater Lake National Park. There she met her husband, Greg Johansson, who she married in 1985. After becoming pregnant, Suzanne made the decision to leave the Park Service and settle down. Then, in 1987, Suzanne competed for and was hired as the executive director of the Bend, Oregon Recycling Team, a nonprofit organization. From this position, she earned the recognition to be appointed to task forces, boards, and committees. She has developed educational programs and has participated in television and newspaper interviews that have helped establish her as a well-respected member of the community. Desiring to become more involved with the community, Suzanne ran for the Bend City Council in April 1993 and won. In November 1994, she competed for one of 4 positions. Receiving the highest number of votes from the electorate, Suzanne won one of the 2 4-year terms. Today, she continues to be an active Bend City Council member and executive director of the recycling team. Within the time she has been with the organization, the annual income has jumped from $100,000 to $1 million. Along with her busy schedule, she is raising 2 children, a daughter, Katie Lynn, who is 10, and a son, Christopher, who is 5. At this time, it is a great honor for me to induct this talented woman, Mrs. Suzanne Breen Johansson, to the 11th Annual Distinguished Gallery of Success.
Thank you. I hardly really feel qualified to be here. I have so many things that I want to accomplish yet. And it's humbling to be here to listen to the stories of the other people who have gone before me. And as you hear from Sarah, I guess, I tried to think what it was actually that brought me here. And I guess the success for me is just the fact that I am here. I went through some very difficult things, and I lived to tell about it. I found myself 18 years old, less than a year out of high school, laying in a hospital bed, unable to move, unable to walk and take a single step. And I'd been a track star and played on the varsity tennis team, and I couldn't even walk, not one step. And the doctors came to me. I was 2,600 miles from home. The doctors came and they said, "You're probably going to die." And I guess my message to you is, I didn't believe them. I knew that I wasn't going to die, that I was going to live, because I wanted to live, and I wanted to go on, and I wanted to do things, and I still want to do things. And I was sitting there thinking about what could I say particularly to the students, if I came here and spoke. And the most important thing is that you can do anything if you decide that that's what you want to do. It doesn't really matter what obstacles are put in front of you if you decide that you want to. If you want to be the best in something, you can. It doesn't mean that you don't have to work. You do have to work. If you want to be best in the world, you can do that too. It just takes a little bit more work. But that really, for everything that I learned, that's what it was. I spent a long time in a hospital. I spent a long time with people who had other very serious illnesses. And some people decided that they didn't want to deal with it and they would die. And those people who lived made a conscious choice. And it's something that we don't really think about. Boy, every day we make choices and we make decisions. You don't really know that you are going to be here tomorrow. And what's important is what you do with what you've got and where you are today. And maybe you will live to be very old and you'll have a long list of accomplishments, and maybe you won't. And so it's important to live every day to its fullest and to believe in your potential. And I thank you for believing in my potential, and I thank my parents too, because I was not the perfect child. I was not the perfect student. I didn't like doing homework. I still don't, but I do it now. I understand. I do a lot of work in my work where it feels like busy work, which homework always seemed like to me. But sometimes it's important to do that work if you want to succeed. I heard that when the schools interview kindergarten students and they ask them, "Can you sing?" They say yes. "Can you dance?" Yes. "Can you paint?" Yes. "Can you draw?" Yes. "Can you write?" Working on it. When they ask high school seniors, "Can you sing?" They say no. "Can you dance?" No. "Can you paint?" No. What happens? I'm here to tell you that you can say yes. Are you going to be as good as someone else? Maybe, maybe not. But that doesn't matter. What matters is that you do your best. The thing is, you can. And if you want to do it better, you can do that too. All it takes is your commitment. Life is unpredictable, it's challenging and rewarding, and yes, sometimes it's painful. But it's all we've got. So we need to make the best of it. Thank you.
To present the closing, Doug Northheim, Junior Class President.
There's nothing that you cannot do. Wait a minute, let me say that in a more positive way. There's everything that you can do. As the distinguished alumni that has just stood before you has proven that fact. All the paths of life have radiated from the Amherst schools. This demonstrates that the Amherst schools prepares the students by nurturing their education, fine arts, athletics, and morals. That's something to be proud of. And expected of you, today's students, whether you're a high school student or you're a student of life, to keep that tradition of excellence alive. strive for greatness, and accept nothing less than your best. Thank you for attending the 11th Annual Distinguished Alumni Gallery of Success. Students, please remain seated until further instructions on dismissal are given, and the inductees are invited back to the school for a luncheon. Thank you for attending, and seize the day.